everyone! My name is Kinanti, Petronela, Gaby, Surlia, and this is...
My name is Salpasjawati. Good morning. Can you tell me your full name, please?
Good morning. My full name is Kinanti, Petronela, Gaby, Surlia, but most people call me Kinan because it's simpler and that's the name I've been using since school. I'm comfortable with both, so you can call me whichever you prefer.
That's your identification, please.
Of course. Here it is. Let me hand it to you. I always kept it in my wallet so it's easy to show when needed.
Thank you. Let's talk about emotion. How do you usually deal with stress?
To be honest, I deal with stress in a variety of ways depending on what kind of stress it is. If it's related to work or academic deadlines, the first thing I usually do is organize my tasks. I break them into smaller steps because it makes everything feel more manageable. When I see things clearly, it reduces that overwhelming feeling and helps me stay focused. But when the stress is more emotional, like when I feel mentally drained or pressured by a situation, I prefer to take a step back. Sometimes I go for a short walk outside just to get some fresh air and reset my mind. On the other times, I listen to music because it really helps me relax and shift my mood. I have a playlist full of calming songs that I play whenever I need to unwind. If things get too intense, I also take a moment to detach from my phone and social media because scrolling often makes me more stressed without realizing it. I try to spend that time doing small activities that ground me, like stretching or watching something funny. Laughter helps a lot more than people think. I'm not perfect at handling stress, but I've learned to recognize the sign earlier and do something about it before it gets worse. It's something I'm still working on, but I think I've made a pretty good progress.
Do you think you are good in managing your own emotion?
I'd say I'm getting better, but there's still a lot of room for improvements. In the past, I didn't really understand my feelings, and I often react too quickly when something upset me. Sometimes I took things personally or kept my emotion bottled up for too long, which eventually made me feel even more stressed. Now, I try to be more mindful. I've been practicing pausing before I respond to something, especially during tense situations. I try to ask myself, why am I feeling a certain way instead of just reacting immediately? It sounds simple, but it has really helped me manage my emotion better. I also try to communicate more openly with people around me instead of staying silent when something bothers me. I try to express it calmly so the problem doesn't grow, and on days when my emotions feel harder to control, I give myself space to cool down. I think taking a break is much better than forcing yourself to act when you're overwhelmed. Overall, I wouldn't say I'm an expert, but compared to how I used to be, I've definitely improved.
Who do you usually talk to when you feel strong emotion, like angry, sad, or excited?
When I experience strong emotions, whether I'm upset, sad, or even really excited, I usually talk to a couple of close friends. They've known me for a long time, so they understand how I think and how I react to things. I feel safe opening up to them because they don't judge me and they always listen patiently before giving advice. Sometimes I talk to my family as well, especially when the situation involves something big or personal. They might not always have the exact solution, but talking to them makes me feel supported. Of course, there are times when I keep things to myself, especially if I feel like I might be bothering others, but I've realized that keeping everything inside isn't healthy. Overall, having a few trusted people to talk to really helps me stay emotionally balanced. Describe a time when your emotional state was strongly affected by an event. A time when my emotional state was strongly affected by an event happened a few months ago, during a period that honestly felt like one of the heaviest moments in my life. It wasn't because of one big dramatic incident, but more because so many things happened at the same time, and each of them slowly built up until they felt overwhelming. At that time, I was under intense academic pressure. I had deadlines coming one after another, and even though I tried to keep up, I constantly felt like I was running behind. On top of that, I was dealing with financial worries. It wasn't a huge crisis or anything, but it was the kind of stress that quietly sits in the back of your mind and never really lets you relax. And to make everything more complicated, I was also going through a confusing situation with someone I like. There were misunderstandings, mixed signals, and moments when I wasn't sure how to feel it. It was emotionally draining, and because everything happened at the same time, I felt like I didn't have the emotional capacity to handle it all. From the outside, nothing looked unusual. People still saw me as someone who was functioning normally, but inside I felt like I was constantly trying to keep myself together. Every day I woke up feeling tired even before doing anything. My mind was restless and my emotions were all over the place. I felt overwhelmed, frustrated, and sometimes even disconnected from myself. It was like I was carrying a heavy backpack that no one else could see, and it kept getting heavier the longer I stayed silent. What made the situation worse was my own mindset. I believed that I had to deal with everything by myself. I kept telling myself, you should be independent, you should be strong, you should solve this alone. And because of that, I didn't reach out to anyone. I didn't talk about my stress, my worries, or how exhausted I actually felt. I thought that asking for help would make me look weak. But in reality, keeping everything inside only made me spiral. I began to lose interest in things I usually enjoyed, like watching movies, listening to music, or spending time with people. Even simple tasks feel unusually heavy. Eventually, I reached a point where I couldn't pretend anymore. One day, after feeling mentally drained for so long, I finally opened up to one of my closest friends. It wasn't planned. It just slipped out because I couldn't hold everything in anymore. And surprisingly, talking about it helped so much. My friend didn't judge me or think I was weak. Instead, they listened, gave me space to express myself, and reminded me that I didn't have to carry everything alone. After that, I slowly began to take steps to improve my emotional state. I started spending more time with people who made me feel comfortable. We watched movies together or talk about random things that had nothing to do with my problems. Those simple moments helped me escape the stress that had been building up inside me. I also tried to be more honest with myself instead of forcing myself to be okay. I allowed myself to admit when I was tired or overwhelmed. I also made small changes in my routines, like limiting my screen time, journaling my thoughts, and giving myself break without feeling guilty. It wasn't an instant fix, but little by little, I could feel the weight lifting off my shoulders. From that experience, I learned something really important. Being independent doesn't mean I have to suffer quietly. I realized that asking for support doesn't make me weak. It makes me human. I also learned that emotional health needs regular attention. I can't just wait until I reach my breaking point before taking care of myself. Now I try to check in with my feelings more often and talk to people I trust whenever I need it. In the end, That difficult period taught me that strength is not about facing everything alone. Real strength comes from knowing when to rest, when to speak, and when to let others be there for me. And honestly, that understanding has changed the way I handle challenge today.
How important is emotional health compared to physical health?
I think emotional health is just as important as physical health, even though people don't always treat it that way. When your emotional state is unstable, it affects everything: your energy, your focus, even your physical well being. You can be perfectly healthy on the outside, but feel completely drained on the inside. And that can stop you from functioning normally. Physical health is more visible, so it's easier to understand, but emotional health works quietly in the background. If it's ignored, it can slowly affect your daily life, your relationship, and your decision. So for me, both are connected, and you can really take care of one without another.
Why do some people find it difficult to express their emotion?
People struggle to express their emotions for different reasons. Some grew up in an environment where talking about feelings wasn't encouraged, so they learn to stay silent. Others feel scared of being judged or misunderstood. Some people simply don't know how to explain what they're feeling because the emotions are too confusing or overwhelming. Expressing emotions also makes people feel vulnerable, and not everyone is comfortable with that. So they keep things inside even when they're hurting because it feels safer than opening up.
Do you think school need to teach emotional intelligence?
Yes, I think schools should teach emotional intelligence because students aren't only preparing for exams, they're preparing for real life. Knowing how to manage stress, handle conflict, communicate feelings, and understand others are skills that matter just as much as academic knowledge. Many young people don't learn these things at home, so school can be a safe place to teach emotional awareness. It won't solve everything, but at least students will have some tools to deal with pressure, relationship, and their own emotion. It could even prevent small issues from turning into bigger mental health problems.
How does social media affect people's emotional well-being?
Social media has a big impact on emotional well being. On the positive side, it can make people feel connected and supported. But negative effects can be strong too. People often compare themselves to others, which can create insecurity or pressure to look perfect. It also exposes people to constant information, arguments, and unrealistic standards. When some scroll too much, they might start feeling anxious, lonely, or disconnected from reality. Even though social media is part of modern life, it requires balance. Otherwise, it can quietly affect someone's self esteem and emotional stability.
Bye! Thank you!